Planned with a variety of speakers of all ages and backgrounds, and we're excited to hear about their insights and learn from their experiences. However, before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that there is absolutely no food or drink allowed in the auditorium at any time. Thank you.
To start the day, it is my pleasure to invite Kelly Crisp, the Vice President of IOY, and Sachin Chaudhary, the Associate Vice President of IOY, to give their opening remarks.
Yeah. Welcome everyone for IYC 12. We are happy to see you all here. We are happy to welcome Assistant Secretary General of Youth Affairs, Felipe Polier, and Ziad, member of Third Committee, United Nations Office. And everyone who is joining online from all the way 189 countries, and we are happy to see you all there online as well. We are starting our opening ceremony right now, and youth solutions for changing world is our theme for this year, and we're gonna get lots of things to on grassroots, especially for the people who don't get the basic facilities at the last mile. And we don't want to put only the things on the paper, but we actually going through the lots of projects and impact that is going on. Before we proceed for that, I would like to invite Kelly to share more about it.
Sure. So I'll welcome everyone. I'm Kelly Crispin, the Vice President of the International Organization of Youth, and our flagship initiative here, the Conference, International Youth Conference. Welcome. Thank you so much. We are so happy to have you. So yeah, the International Organization of Youth is a diplomatic accelerator for young people, and we really focus on introducing youth to multilateral diplomacy, the UN, and other policymaking spaces. I would say we are into like professional networks. Sometimes this is the first truly international professional network for youth, and so we really encourage you to create your network here. And if you are joining us from online, definitely make use of that too, that space, and we encourage you to network there as well. So this is a really exciting event for us because we will today present our policy papers that our youth have been working on. These are youth-written policy papers distributed in the IOY, among the IOY partners around the world, in the United Nations, and in academia, and also presented here. Let me say a little bit about some of our other IOI initiatives. So we have the policy papers, and we also have impact projects. The impact projects are probably my favorite thing that we have. We are seeing projects coming in from 197 countries. So this is when people go back after IYC to their countries, their regions, and they create a program that reaches out to the community, and then they submit these impact projects to us. So we're seeing this in 47 countries, 165 cities impacted in total, and I want to tell you the numbers. We have 14,889 impacted. Direct impacted is 594,586. Indirectly impacted, 8 million people. That is from IYC conference programming. So the conference itself is unfolding over these 4 days here during the United Nations General Assembly, the UN 80. And over these 4 days, we'll hear about youth engagement and multilateral diplomacy, climate resilience, artificial intelligence, North-South cooperation, and topics related to all of that. We represent the largest youth convening during the GA 80. And so over these 4 days, we're gonna have 270 speakers total, and that's something we're very proud of. So the registration right now is around 22,084, and our registration, like Sachin said, is across 189 countries. Yeah, so we'll also be streaming IYC 12, the conference on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and via our app. So the official IOI app will be streaming all of these conference sessions. This allows us to reach people across the globe, even where social media is either not permitted or not available. So if you have access to a phone, you can find us wherever you are. I would like to thank our partners, the United Nations Habitat Youth Program, UNITAR, United Nations Institute of Training and Research, UN Geneva Beyond Lab, the Major Group of Children and Youth, and IAAI, GLOCHA, and a special thank you to the Salvation Army International Justice Center where we are today. Thank you so much for providing this space for our community. We really appreciate it, and I'm so happy to welcome you here to IYC 12.
So be ready for the things that we're gonna have today and the coming 3 days. And we want to make sure that once you finish these days and go back to your place, community, you are actually getting into the different SDGs, different projects that actually impacting to the grounds. You know, the today in this world, in this crazy world, people says power is important, but power is important for those who hold it, especially the youth who hold the power and who bring the change in the world. So you are the youth, you are the power, you are the advocate of human rights, global justice, quality education, reducing inequalities, reducing female ferticide, reducing gender inequalities, and so on. Get ready. We are again welcoming you at IYC 12. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly and Sachin, for your insights and sharing more details about what the conference has to offer and more about IOI's initiatives. Now we'll be hearing from you Gratna Shivastava and Sameh Kamel, who are representing our organizing partner, the Major Group for Children and Youth.
Good morning everybody. My name is Sameh Kamel, and I'm joined by my colleague Gratna. And today we're speaking on recognizing the gravity of the moment and what this convening means for the broader youth community. We are delighted to be joined by youth advocates, the IYC team and partners, the Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs, Dr. Philippe Polier, and the Senior Intergovernmental Affairs Officer and the Secretary of the UNGA Third Committee, Mr. Ziad Al-Muhammasani. MGCY serves as a designated self-organized space for youth to engage in over 50 intergovernmental and 100 multi-stakeholder processes at the UN. MGCY has the membership of over 20,000 youth organizations, and the youth coordination team of MGCY convenes by global focal points of more than 35 youth constituencies in the UN system, including constituencies you may all be familiar with, like Yongo, the UNFCCC Youth Constituency, Migration Youth and Children Platform, Global Youth Health Caucus, and many, many more. Colleagues, these are not normal times. We are uncertain of the future of multilateralism, especially after hearing certain speeches yesterday. Not sure what will happen within the United Nations. Witnessing an ongoing genocide, conflict tearing apart society, and the loss of thousands of children and youth. It compels us to ask, what does the future of multilateralism look like? We reiterate the call for the immediate and permanent ceasefire in all conflicts across the world, and affirm that we stand in solidarity with Palestine and communities everywhere who are suffering. But most importantly, today, we are all Palestinians. Now, youth leadership and action gives us hope. As we convene the 80th UN General Assembly, we highlight the active leadership of young people, taking on speaking roles in high-level meetings on artificial intelligence, Rohingya, the SDGs moment, serving as partners of the SDG 7 Action Forum, Digital Technology Day, and organizing over 100 independent events. The voices of youth are loud and clear. We highlight that the outcome documents of the GA and other intergovernmental processes are not just negotiated texts, but referendums on the lives of people, especially frontline communities. We also continue to hear about the word reform, the process underway as part of the UN 80 celebration. When the UN 75 process happened 5 years ago, it gave young people a promise of renewed multilateralism. The UN 80 process cannot take away that hope. UN 80 must strengthen and not backslide programmatic work of the UN on youth issues. The reforms must not be negatively affect staff working on youth and civil society issues and major groups and other stakeholders. All these must have direct ways to provide inputs to the process.
Thank you, Sami. As we convene today, I also want to take this opportunity to highlight work that has been done by young people throughout the year. This includes the tremendous mobilization led by the youth constituencies in lead up to FFD4, the UN Oceans Conference, HLPF, and as they are charting their way towards the World Social Summit and other moments coming up next year. We highlight that in a world that has shrinking space for civil society and has seen and continues to see backsliding on multilateralism, we believe in power of young people to drive change globally. Children and youth, especially those in front lines, must be at the forefront of driving these changes. Meaningful youth engagement has to keep moving beyond theory and to action. We talk a lot about ideological imperialism in the world on gender issues. I want to address the ideological imperialism when it comes to meaningful youth engagement. It should not be up to some think tanks or bodies to determine what meaningful youth engagement looks like for young people. It should be reflective of their day-to-day realities and not prescribed to young people living in marginalized communities and on grassroots. The power of shaping meaningful youth engagement lies within the hands of young people themselves. We continue to advocate and recognize the diversity in which young people are involved and celebrate that diversity as well. Finally, we want to highlight some of the demands for this year that were not met and that we believe should be met in the coming months. First is the IFA reform. The current structure that we have of the international financial architecture is not working. The debt crisis is something that would be inherited by children and youth of the world directly. We call for establishment of a sovereign debt repudiation and relief authority that would address the debts, including illegitimate debts that are owed by the global South nations to the MDBs. We call for that to happen immediately. Secondly, we have not seen much progress when it comes to reform of the board of the multilateral development banks, including the World Bank and the IMF. And it is extremely important, as recognized in the outcome document of the President's Summary of ECOSOC Youth Forum 2025, that young people and civil society have a direct seat or access to the boards of the decision-making bodies of these multilateral development banks. Finally, I want to conclude by highlighting an invitation for all of you to join us in the series of next mobilization. The HLMs here, including the HLM on AI, HLM on Rohingyas, YPA, and others that Same talked about, is part of a big roadmap of youth mobilization that happens throughout the year. A pinnacle of this roadmap is the ECOSOC Youth Forum, which is the largest convening of youth stakeholders, member states, UN agencies, and youth delegates on youth issues. This year at ECOSOC Youth Forum, something big happened. We actually expanded the central partners group of the Youth Forum to include direct representation from youth groups from marginalized communities, from countries relevant to the work of the forum that year, and groups that are relevant to the theme of the session. This reformed governance structure we believe makes Youth Forum a system of co-leadership in the UN, which is the broadest and most effective in tandem with Youth 2030 and the Pact for the Future Youth Working Group. With that, we invite you to join us on the road to the Youth Forum 2026. We would love to have all of you engage and be with us in solidarity. People power, power to youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your remarks, and thank you again for your partnership in organizing this conference. It is now my pleasure to invite Ali Mustafa, the founder and CEO of the International Organization of Youth and International Youth Conference, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Josephine, and good morning, everyone. Good morning to everyone who are present here. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to the people who are watching us online. What I see right now, we have over 300 people watching us on YouTube, and I think we have some engagement going on LinkedIn and also on Facebook as well. The moment is really crucial. We are here for the 12th International Youth Conference, and it's at the time of when UN is celebrating its 80th anniversary. And tomorrow we will be celebrating the 30th anniversary of the World Program for Action on Youth. It is really important because at the 80th anniversary, United Nations is asking advices and actually open for reforms. And it is really, really essential that reforms are happening, and young people are gathered here in New York City, and many of you are here. We need to understand that why it is important and how important it is. World is at a very crucial moment right now, and we are seeing political changes. We are seeing a change in environment and climate. We are seeing the change in dynamics of the world. That's how the affairs of the world are being run. We have seen certain change in multilateral affairs that are happening, and then we are seeing young people taking more charge, more and more and more charge. The reason on the place that International Organization of Youth was formed with the help of UN Habitat Youth Program and UN Department of Global Communication to bridge the gap between the UN and the youth, especially the youth in Global South. We wanted to take the message of the UN beyond the First Avenue of New York and take it on the doorsteps of young people where they are. What is the message of the UN, and engage with them on the grassroots and bring the voices of the grassroots to the United Nations and see and make them heard, like what young people like you and people who are online actually doing significant work on ground, and they do not have means, they do not have access to make their voice heard. And with that, we made some efforts, and we are still making efforts. And you heard about me before, like about our impact projects. That impact projects are happening when you do the conference. You go home in your countries, and who are people are already in their countries watching. Based on the learning of the conference, they do the projects. They report us number, and they act on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. As we promised that we are going to bridge the gap between the youth and the United Nations, we are doing it. and we will continue doing that. And one of the examples is that we have Assistant Secretary General for the Youth Affairs with us present here. And you will be hearing from him soon after me. And then we have the Senior Political Affair Officer for the Third Committee, Mr. Ziad, with us here, who we usually see him at the ECOSOC Youth Forum chairing. But you will be hearing from him for the first time in the youth spaces. So while you're here for the 4 days, make sure you make the most out of it. Many of you are out from the New York City, so make sure you have some time for yourself as well. But make sure you network, you learn more, and you engage more. At the end of this conference, we are going to release our informal youth recommendation for the UN80 reform. Then we will definitely submit it to the youth office that we done the informal consultations on and reimagining the UN. My friend Alex is reinventing the UN. So you will hear from him as well on reinventing the UN today as well. So welcome, and we look forward to see you for the next 4 days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ali, for your thoughts and all of the work you've done to make this conference and IOI's work possible. It is now my great honor to introduce Dr. Felipe Paulier, the Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs. Dr. Paulier has worked in a variety of positions throughout his career, including as Director del Instituto Nacional de la Juventud, a facilitator of the Leadership and Development Program in the Fratelli Tutti Political School, and as a writer of El País, Uruguay. Welcome, Dr. Paulier.
Ooh, sorry, I don't want, there's another mic here, but it's intentional. Okay, perfect. That's great. Technology. Good morning, how are we? Good? Great, that's the energy we need for this next few days of this very busy UN General Assembly for everyone. First of all, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to join you at this opening. I will need to run very fast after these minutes with you, because as you know, also during this high-level week, there's plenty of stakeholder partners around in the city in New York, and it's always an opportunity also to engage bilaterally with youth ministers from every region. You know, I was running here from a meeting with the president of ACYF from China, and I think I'm going to a meeting with a minister from Africa now. But I'm glad to see such a diverse audience with us today, and also many more of you joining virtually, you know, through different platforms. So huge recognition to those that made this conference possible. This 12th, you know, International Youth Conference, which I am sure it's going to be much more than a conference. It will be really a space for co-creation, for connection, to build action, and also to build hope, you know, because I think that in a moment where things are so crazy, so uncertain, people are suffering so much in many parts of the world, and unfortunately, we hear some disappointment speeches from our world leaders, you know. I think young people, you being here, you showing up, you believing in the UN, are giving a very different and necessary message of action, but also of hope, you know, that things could be different, you know, that could be, you know, that it's possible to be together in the same room, coming from different regions, coming from different backgrounds, having different ideologies, you know, and it's possible, you know, and there's some things that need us to be together as one community, you know. You know, I know that the topic for this year, it's about youth solutions for a world that is changing, you know. And I think I'm not saying anything new if I refer to you as change makers, you know. I don't know most of you, I know some of you, but I'm sure that you are all in your communities already doing concrete things for your people, that you know what the people of your countries need, I'm not sure. I will ask a question here. How many of you is the first time here in New York? Okay, there's a large part of you that are here for the first time in this General Assembly week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for flying from from very far countries. And thank you really for believing in the UN as a platform while we are seeing all this crazy news every day. Sometimes really impacting in our well-being, and our mental health, because it's not easy to deal with all what is happening in the world, but thank you for showing up. I think that's a message that young people are bringing to the UN every year in a much louder way. Jugradna Same, we're introducing, the upcoming 2026 ECOSOC. This year ECOSOC was a huge success, and it's, a big part of that. It's because of MGCY, ICMIO, the young people that are behind, of course, with the guidance and the support with the UN system, the UN family, DGICM, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and many, many parts of the UN that are supporting. But this is something, youth-led, with the heart of young people, and every year has been growing, and that's showing something, that it's showing that even though at many levels the UN might not be working perfectly, the UN is really being more inclusive every year, and I think the inclusiveness really reflects on how the youth agenda has been advancing in the last years. As you may know, tomorrow, for the first time ever, there's going to be a high-level meeting on youth during the high-level meeting of the General Assembly. We shouldn't take that for granted, Of course, it's not enough. It's not enough to have, a lot of discussions and conferences within the walls of the UN headquarters that I'm sure that even for some of you, it's even hard to access during this high-level week, But it's a good sign that our world leaders are going to be there, focusing on young people, being accountable of what they are doing at the national level for the youth of the world, for the youth of their countries, because that's how we drive change, Of course, we have our common and global agenda, which are the Sustainable Development Goals. But it's how that Sustainable Development Goals are transformed into action in each of our communities. And that's why we need to work not only at the global stages, but mainly at the local stages, And I'm sure that many of you are already engaging with your national governments through civil society. You're engaging with the UN country teams. And for those that might not be at that point yet, I encourage you to go in that direction, The UN in the last years, since the UN started its strategy to focus on young people, has made a huge progress when it's about engaging young people, not only at the global stage, not only in these, big events that are very powerful and very important, but actually in the day-to-day, Now, 40% of the UN country teams of the world already have a specific or a certain type of youth mechanism to engage young people meaningfully across how the UN as a whole is supporting governments in development, in peace and security, in human rights, And this, it's not just happening because of a coincidence. This is because the power of young people. And this is because of the demographics of the world, Half of the world population is under 30. That's very, very clear in Africa, where in some countries we are talking about even 75% of the population being under 35, And 90% of those young people in our world are living in developing countries. So it means that the young people of our world, our current generation, although is the largest and the most education generation ever, we're still having huge challenges when it's about access of employment, when it's about access to education, and when it's about access to health, including, an holistic approach to health, with a strong emphasis also for our generation when it's about mental health, And, this is not statistics. This is really global power, This is really potential, And that's why these platforms are so important, because it's really about connecting young people among themselves. It's really about building capacities, but it's really about understanding that we are part of something larger, you know? I work at the UN, you know, I have the responsibility of leading the newly, or not so newly now, it's almost 2 years, established United Nations Youth Office that was a testament of how important the youth agenda is for the UN, you know? And our role is really to bring the different parts of the UN family together, to accelerate and to improve how we work, not only for young people, but especially with young people. And that's why meaningful participation for us, it's in everything we do, you know? And we try our best for this participation to be meaningful. Although meaningful, it's an ideal, you know? And it's an ideal where we need to navigate to, but of course, it's about trial, error, until we are every time closer to that space. And as I mentioned, tomorrow we will have this high-level meeting on youth. We will have, I think, almost 20 head of state participating in this high-level meeting of youth. We will have, I think, 70 ministers, you know, maybe a colleague from the JCM will correct me on those numbers. At least those were the numbers last week. But it's not enough, you know, and that's why our office, alongside multiple partners of the UN and beyond, you know, we try to mobilize young people building up to this high-level meeting, you know, and we promoted a series of youth dialogues across regions, you know, almost 640 dialogues in person, almost 75,000 young people that participated, bringing their voice, you know, to this process, but also in an innovative way, you know, looking not only to the problems, but also with a foresight perspective, looking into the future, because that's the UN we want. We want a UN that is really future fit, you know, that is future ready to address the challenges of today that are different than the challenges 8 years ago, you know. And young people shared their reality, you know. They told us about what they need are decent jobs, you know. This is not new, guys. This was one of the big priorities 30 years back when the World Program of Action of Youth was approved in the General Assembly. They put on the table the need for education, but an education that prepares young people for a real world, you know, not just to save, no, sorry, I'm translating from Spanish, to approve exams. And also, you know, a very key topic that came from young people is about mental health, you know, and really about breaking the taboo and the stigma when we're talking about these topics and elevating this and making this a global priority. And definitely, young people were bringing how technology really, it's about inclusion. But for technology to be about inclusion, we need to, you know, address the digital divide that many of our youth fellows in many parts of the world are still experiencing every day, you know. But you told us a lot about the future also, you know, and how, you know, we need also to have systems that not only focus on development, economic development, but also focusing on the planet, you know, because this is our common house. And young people and children are the ones that will inherit, you know, every of the consequences that are actually, and decisions that are being taken today, you know. We shouldn't be questioning science, you know. Science is telling us very clear messages, you know. Climate change is real, you know, and we have time to take action as a global community. You know, guys, many of the things sometimes look a little bit far, you know, and they look like dreams, you know. And we need to pursue that, you know, utopia, that idea. We need to. But at the same time, we need to be ready with concrete actions and plans, you know. And I know these 4 days are about that, you know, are about concrete action, plans, you know. You can know that you have in the UN many allies, you know, across many parts of the UN, you know. And I hope that you see us as that, you know. We all have different roles. You have a very clear role as young persons to push for change, to make us accountable, to make your governments accountable, But also, change is and will be intergenerational. So really, if we really want to achieve transformation so that in 30 years, when we celebrate not the 30th, but the 60th anniversary of the World Programme of Action on Youth, we can all be celebrating that employments have been created, that education is really adapted to the challenges that young people face, and that our institutions are really responding to the demands that our well-being and mental health, and that what young people are claiming and pushing for is a reality, And this change will happen not opposing each other. It will happen if we build together. So as we are already doing, through platforms like MGCY, through platforms like this International Youth Conference, So I invite you to continue to challenge systems, to speak up when you need to speak up, but also my invitation is to build coalitions and collaboration, And you can find, and I'm sure if you close your eyes and you think for a couple of minutes, you will know who are those senior leaders in your communities, in your universities, in your schools, in your governments that could be that support for this intergenerational partnership. So I wish you the very best for this conference, and thank you once again for allowing me to be in the opening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Collier, for your contributions and for taking the time to join us today to speak about the importance of youth action and hope. It is now my great pleasure to give the floor to Christopher Borgen, who will share some details about the IOI policy papers and their creation process.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Borgen. I'm an associate here at the International Organization of Youth, and I'm a second-year political science student at UCLA. This summer, I had the honor of leading IOI's policy project, in which young people from around the world drafted policy papers on issues of pressing concern. After dozens of meetings across time zones, countless pages of research, and many hours of writing and editing, I'm thrilled to announce the release of our policy papers. The process began during the 11th International Youth Conference, but the values of the project stretch back far longer. IOI is built upon the ideal of increasing youth engagement in international spaces of all kinds. Researching and drafting policy papers is an effective way to accomplish that goal. Through these documents, we hope to amplify youth voices on topics relevant to all generations and to dismantle the confinement of youth voices solely to so-called youth issues. Our project focuses on 7 areas: education, community representation, equitable employment, innovation and technology, mental health and well-being, peace and security, and UN reform. We selected these topics after listening to the youth perspectives on international issues shared at IYC 11. Our team of 40 young people from around the world researched and wrote these papers. We learned from academic research and public consultation with over 1,100 youth. We formed our suggestions and then honed them through group discussions to create these documents. As we proceeded with our research and drafting, we began to focus on particular issues within the larger topics. The education paper centered around ameliorating the situation of teachers through more reasonable job expectations, as well as increasing school involvement with outside organizations. The writers of the community representation section emphasized the importance of increasing Indigenous youth's practices, while also developing effective channels for local leaders to participate in international spaces. Those working on equitable employment chose to center their efforts both on workplace discrimination, as well as how AI will change how we work. The Innovation and Technology Group also considered the importance of AI, but through the lens of ethical development and implementation alongside the improvement of digital public infrastructure. The mental health and well-being team addressed both the need to reduce the stigma around seeking support, as well as ways to improve access to qualified professionals. The authors of the Peace and Security section researched methods to decrease civilian casualties in war through both the control of weapons of mass destruction and also regulation of conventional weaponry. Finally, the UN reforms team sought to improve the efficacy of UN actions, while also increasing the impact that smaller nations may have in international negotiations. The first 6 of these papers will be distributed starting today. You can access them by scanning a QR code that we will make available. However, the final paper, UN Reforms, is still in its final consultation process. That is, we are listening to everyone here for their input. As UN 80 discusses how the United Nations may change for the future, we hope to mirror those dialogues here and implement what we learn into the UN Reforms paper. And that will then be released at the end of IYC 12. These papers contain youth-created recommendations to problems that exist for all generations. We hope to distribute these papers to the leaders of today, and we hope that they will choose to listen to the leaders of tomorrow and create a better world for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for your insights. I had the pleasure of working with Chris on the community representation policy paper, and it was an interesting process to be part of, and I look forward to seeing how the papers grow from here. I would now like to invite Amanda Haley and Eliza McGlashan up to share their remarks on the International Organization of Youth's impact projects.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Amanda, and I'm a director with IYC.
And my name is Eliza McGlashan, and I'm a program and impact associate here at IYC.
So we're briefly going to talk about the impact team and what the impact team has been working on. So the impact team develops frameworks to assess the conference effectiveness in achieving its goals, gather data, and analyze the impact of various initiatives. So we've received about 197 different impact submissions, and we're going to be covering the top 3 today.
Awesome. So yeah, we're going to briefly touch on the top 3, and then we also shortlisted a top 10 of the impact projects, which you can find on our social media, and we'll also briefly touch on in this presentation. So the first project that we want to touch on in our top 3 is called Edukasi Emosi. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, from Malaysia, which is a youth-led capstone project that focuses on empowering students and young people to take control of their emotional regulation and mental health through workshops that teach them how to regulate their emotions, understand their emotions, and speak with counselors to take control of their mental health. Because as we heard in many earlier keynote speeches, this is a super pressing topic for a lot of students, especially, and all young people around the world these days. The second project we want to be touching on is the Initiative for Digital Education and Access for Teens from Nigeria, which included a two-day STEM workshops across Nigeria. And this included 100 high school students and introduced them to robotics, programming, and innovation, as well as allowed them to explore career opportunities in these fields. The third project that we want to be talking about is Cervica, which was in Malawi and created an AI-powered device that detects cervical cancer earlier and more accurately. And this device was designed to be super easily accessible and cheap to access in underserved areas to expand this outreach of this medical care and make it easier for people to access in these areas that may not have other strong healthcare institutions. And yeah, I'll pass it back to Amanda.
Yeah, so please make sure you check out our social media for the top 10 change makers. We have people from Bangladesh, Sierra Leone, Libya, Nigeria, the United States, Rwanda, and Uganda. So please check it out, and they're amazing submissions.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much to Eliza and Amanda for giving us some insight into the impact projects for this cycle. It is now my honor to introduce Ziad Mamasumi. Mr. Mamosany currently serves as the Senior Intergovernmental Affairs Officer and Secretary of the Third Committee of the General Assembly. He formerly served as a Political Affairs Officer and a member of the General Assembly Secretariat in addition to several other positions. Please welcome Mr. Mamosany.
Hello. Good morning, colleagues and friends. Thank you for inviting me to speak at this International Youth Conference as we start the 80th session of the General Assembly. It's an honor to join you this morning for the opening. In my role as Secretary of Intergovernmental Bodies, including the Third Committee, the Commission on the Status of Women, and the Youth Forum, I have direct exposure to the issues that matter to you, to young people, including human rights, social development, and inclusion. This year, as the UN turns 80, we're talking a lot about reform. But real reform isn't just about changing rules or structures. It's about making sure the United Nations actually works for everyone, including young people. Let's be honest, youth engagement in the intergovernmental bodies at the UN still has a long way to go. I've spent the last 2 days attending and supporting high-level meetings in the GA, held in accordance with their respective modalities. While these meetings discussed anniversaries, such as the 80th anniversary of the UN, the 30th anniversary of the Fourth World Conference on Women, they also discussed the future, including what needs to be done and what the situation will look like in 30 years or 80 years. I did not hear enough from young people. We are all, of course, looking forward for the high-level meeting tomorrow on the 30th anniversary of the World Programme of Action for Youth. When you are at the table, many times young people are asked for their opinions, but those opinions don't always shape decisions. This needs to change. What needs to be done is clear, and I've heard you say it many times. Youth must have real seats at the table, not just as observers, but as contributors in intergovernmental processes. Barriers to participation need to be lowered. That means more accessible meetings, more support for youth-led organizations, and more opportunities for young people from all backgrounds, not just those who already have access. Listening is important, but it doesn't replace action. When youth raise issues, whether it's on social justice, mental health, digital rights, concrete action should follow. Looking forward to the start of this intergovernmental cycle that runs from September to September, spanning the Third Committee and other main committees in the fall, the World Summit on Social Development in November, the Commission on Social Development in February, the Commission on the Status of Women in March, the ECOSOC and Financing for Development follow-up forums in April, HLPF in July, among others. It's essential for youth perspectives to be included in the outcomes and debates. There will be dedicated opportunities, including a planned Third Committee-linked event, so keep on the lookout for this event. The CSW Youth Dialogue, the ECOSOC Youth Forum, which Ugratna described as the pinnacle, and others. These forums are co-led or fully led by young people in most cases. But you need to keep pushing and keep striving for broader and more mainstream space to ensure that your activism and your ideals permeate through these processes to make and shape the decisions. The UN at 80 is a chance to reset and to do better. And Chris, we're looking forward to seeing your UN 80 reform paper. I am confident that things should move in the right direction, including with the support of the UN Youth Office and the great work of ASG Dr. Philippe Paulier, DESA and others, but primarily also through your determination and actions. Thank you for your energy, your ideas, and your commitment. I look forward to seeing you as partners in the forthcoming meetings at the UN. And throughout October and November, I'll be in the basement in Conference Room 1 for the Third Committee. Thank you very much.
This concludes the opening session of IYC 12. Thank you to Dr. Paulier and Mr. Mamosany for your remarks and to all of the other distinguished speakers we've had. And I look forward to continuing this momentum through the rest of the conference.
We will now have a very brief 5-minute break before the beginning of our first panel. This session is titled UN 80 in People-Centered Multilateralism, Engaging with the United Nations on All Levels, with speakers Matej Prokop, Yugratna Srivastava, Ali Mustafa, and moderator Christopher Morgan. Please be back in 2 to 3 minutes so we can start the panel on time. Thank you.